Mr. Holloway had lived on that street for 31 years and spoken to his neighbors exactly 3 times, all 3 times to complain. He didn't wave, he didn't nod. When kids rode their bikes past his yard, he watched them from the window like they were trespassers. Nobody on the block really knew him, they just knew to stay away, and maybe you've met someone like him. Or maybe, stay with me here, maybe there was a moment in your own life when you were him. Not the grumpy neighbor, but the person who had quietly closed the door, built the wall, learned not to expect much from people because something had happened, something you don't talk about much anymore. Then, one Tuesday morning, Mr. Holloway opened his front door and found a small white envelope taped right at eye level. No name on the outside, just a crayon drawing of a sun. He almost threw it away. He didn't. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't look like loneliness from the outside. It looks like curtains drawn at 2 in the afternoon. It looks like a porch light that never comes on. It looks like a man who mows his lawn at exactly 7 in the morning every Saturday without looking up once. That was Arthur Holloway, retired, widower, 71 years old. He had a routine so precise you could set a clock by it. Coffee at 6:15, the newspaper, a physical one folded in thirds, read front to back before 8. A walk around the block at 9, headphones in, eyes forward, lunch at noon, the History Channel, dinner alone, bed by 10. People on Sycamore Drive had learned to read him the way you learned to read weather. When his car was in the driveway, you kept your voice down. When he was in the yard, you crossed to the other side of the street. His neighbor Linda once tried to bring him a plate of brownies after his wife passed. He opened the door, looked at the plate, looked at her, and said, "I don't eat sugar." Then he closed the door. She never tried again. And here's the thing about people like Arthur Holloway, the thing nobody talks about because it's uncomfortable to say out loud, is that somewhere along the way they made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not a moment you could point to and say, "There, that's when it happened." It was quieter than that. It was a series of small surrenders, a friendship that faded and wasn't replaced, a conversation that went wrong and was never repaired, a grief that came and didn't leave, and after a while the person just reorganized their life around it, built the furniture of their days around a hole they'd stopped trying to fill. Arthur had been married to Margaret for 43 years. She was the one who waved to the neighbors. She was the one who remembered birthdays, who kept a running mental list of who was going through what, who sent cards for things people didn't expect cards for, promotions, first days of school, the anniversary of a loss. Arthur used to tease her about it. "You don't even know these people," he'd say, and she'd just smile and keep writing. When she died 3 years before that Tuesday morning with the envelope, the card stopped, the waves stopped, the porch light stopped. And Arthur told himself that was fine, that at his age you don't need much, that people were more trouble than they were worth, that he had his routine, his silence, his mornings. He told himself that so many times it stopped feeling like a lie. But here's what nobody tells you about a man like that, about anyone like that, is that the wall they build around themselves isn't actually to keep people out, it's to keep something in. Because if you let one person through, if you let one genuine moment of connection happen, then everything you've been managing, everything you've been holding at arm's length since the funeral, since the fight, since whatever it was that changed you, all of it comes rushing back. And that's a risk some people aren't willing to take. Arthur was one of those people, until that envelope. He stood at his front door for a moment before picking it up, looked up and down the street. No one. Just the sound of a sprinkler 2 houses down and the early September air, still warm but with that first hint of something cooler underneath. He peeled it off the door carefully. The tape had been placed with the kind of seriousness only a child can bring to small tasks. Perfectly straight, double-layered. He turned the envelope over. On the back, in purple marker, in handwriting that was trying very hard to be neat, for the man with the gray house. Arthur almost smiled, almost. He carried the envelope inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stood looking at it while the coffee maker hissed and sputtered behind him. He sat down. He didn't open it right away. And in that pause, in that one ordinary Tuesday morning moment, something shifted. Not dramatically, not the way it shifts in movies with music and light, just a small, quiet shift. The kind you don't notice until later, when you're trying to remember when everything changed and you realize it was there, right there, in a crayon envelope on a kitchen table. He opened it slowly. Not the way you tear into something, the way you open something when you're not sure you're ready for what's inside. The paper was folded twice, pink, the kind that comes in those little stationery sets you find in the school supply aisle with the flowers printed in the corners. He unfolded it on the table, smoothed it flat with the side of his hand. The handwriting was careful. You could tell she had drafted it somewhere else first. There were no crossouts, no smudges, just 11 words, written in the center of the page in blue ink. 11 words. I see you every day. I just wanted you to know. That was it. No name, no explanation, no ask. Arthur read it once. Then he sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling. Now, I want you to think about something for a moment. Think about the last time someone told you they saw you, not your work, not your role, not the face you put on in the morning before you walk out the door, but you, the quiet one. The one who shows up and does what needs to be done and doesn't make a fuss about it and has almost stopped expecting anyone to notice. Think about the last time someone said, without agenda, without wanting anything in return, I see you. For some of you, you have to go back a long way to find that memory. For others, you can't find it at all. Arthur Holloway sat at that kitchen table for close to an hour. The coffee went cold. The newspapers stayed folded. Outside, the neighborhood went about its morning, cars backing out of driveways, a dog barking 2 streets over, someone's radio through an open window playing something from the 70s, life moving the way life moves when it doesn't know it just changed something, because that's how it works, isn't it? The moments that matter most don't announce themselves. They don't come with music or ceremony. They come folded twice on pink stationery. They come in a voice message you almost didn't listen to. They come in a sentence at the end of a phone call that almost didn't happen. And if you're not paying attention, if you've gotten so good at keeping the world at arm's length, you can miss them entirely. Arthur had missed a lot of them. He knew that now, sitting there. The thought arrived without cruelty, just as a kind of quiet accounting. Margaret had been the one who caught those moments. She was built for them. He was built for other things, practicality, reliability, being the one you called when something was broken and needed fixing. But nobody had called him for anything in 3 years. He folded the letter back along its original creases, set it down, picked up his coffee mug, cold, and held it anyway, the way you hold something when you need something to hold. He looked out the kitchen window. Across the street, the house was quiet. Green shutters. A garden that someone tended carefully, not professionally, you could tell, but with love. Tomato cages. A small ceramic frog by the front step. A bicycle on its side in the driveway, the kind with training wheels still attached. He'd never looked at that house before. Not really. He'd looked at it, but not at it. There's a difference. You probably know the difference. There are people in your life right now you've been looking at for years without really seeing. People who pass through your peripheral vision every day, a coworker, a parent, a neighbor, maybe even someone in your own house, and somewhere along the way they became part of the furniture, part of the background, and they feel it. They always feel it, even when they don't say a word. Arthur set down the mug. He reread the letter one more time. I see you every day. I just wanted you to know. A 9-year-old girl. She'd probably spent more time thinking about what to write than he'd spent thinking about anyone in years. He folded it once more, slipped it into the front pocket of his flannel shirt. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he sat with something that wasn't emptiness. He didn't know what to call it yet. But it was there, small and unfamiliar, like a sound you hear in a quiet house and can't quite place. Not threatening, just present. Arthur Holloway, 71 years old, sat in his kitchen with a child's letter over his heart. And the day looked slightly different through the window than it had an hour before. Her name was Lily Brennan, 9 years old. Third grade at Riverside Elementary, where she was known for two things: asking too many questions in class and always noticing things other people walked right past. Her teacher, Mrs. Okafor, had written in her last report card, "Lily has a rare quality of genuine curiosity about the world around her. She pays attention." Her mother had read that and laughed quietly to herself because she knew exactly what that meant. It meant Lily would stop on the sidewalk to look at a beetle for 4 full minutes. It meant she noticed when the librarian got a haircut. It meant she asked, in the middle of dinner one Wednesday evening, out of what seemed like nowhere, "Mom, why doesn't the man across the street ever smile?" Her mother had glanced out the window. "Mr. Holloway? He's out there every morning. He never looks happy." "Some people are just private, sweetheart." That's not the same as not smiling. Her mother had no answer for that. So she said, "Eat your dinner, Lily." But Lily kept watching, and this is what she saw from her bedroom window over the months she'd been watching without anyone knowing she was watching. She saw a man who moved through his days like he was carrying something heavy. Not physically, he stood straight, moved deliberately. But there was a weight to him, a kind of slowness that had nothing to do with age. She saw him come home from his morning walk and stand on the porch for a moment before going inside. Just stand there, like he wasn't quite ready to go back in but had nowhere else to go. She saw him once pick up a woman's cardigan from the hall closet she could see through the screen door and hold it for a second before hanging it back up. She was 9 years old and she didn't have words for what she was seeing, but she felt it. And here's the thing about children that we forget somewhere around the time we learn to be sophisticated. They haven't yet developed the mechanism that tells us to look away from other people's pain. That voice that says it's none of your business, or you can't fix that, or people like their privacy. That voice comes later. It gets installed gradually, like software you didn't ask for, and by the time most people reach their 30s, it's running constantly in the background. Lily didn't have that voice yet. So when she decided to write the letter, she didn't overthink it. She didn't wonder how it would be received, or whether it was appropriate, or what he would think of her. She just got out her pink stationery, the one with the daisies in the corner, and she sat at her desk and she thought very carefully about what she wanted to say. She wanted him to know she'd seen him, that was all. She wrote several drafts. She'd cross them out and start again. Not because they were wrong exactly, but because they didn't feel like the truth yet. One said, "I hope you're okay." She crossed it out. Too much like something a grown-up would say. One said, "I think you seem sad, and that makes me sad too." Closer, but still not right. Then she wrote the final one, and she read it back to herself, lips moving slightly the way they do when you're reading something that matters. She folded it, got the tape from her mother's desk drawer, walked across the street in the early morning while the neighborhood was still quiet, her sneakers wet from the dew on the grass. She taped it to the door, straight, careful. Then she ran back across the street and went upstairs and watched from her window. She waited a long time. When his door finally opened, she held her breath. She watched him peel the envelope off, look at it, look up and down the street, go back inside. She waited. Nothing. She went to school. All day she thought about it. During math, during lunch, during the long bus ride home. She wasn't anxious exactly. More like she had done the thing she needed to do, and now it was his. Whatever happened next was up to him. There's a wisdom in that, even if she couldn't have named it. You say the true thing, you do the honest thing, and then you let it go because you can't control what people do with truth. You can only offer it. Most adults spend decades trying to learn that. Lily already knew it. She just didn't know she knew it. For 3 days, Arthur did nothing. He carried the letter in his shirt pocket the first day, moved it to the nightstand the second. By the third morning, it was on the kitchen table again, next to his coffee mug, like it had found its way back there on its own. He thought about it more than he wanted to admit, not obsessively, not with the kind of spiraling that anxious people do, more like the way a song gets into your head, not loudly, just present, there in the background, there when you're washing the dishes, there in the pause between one thought and the next. I see you every day. I just wanted you to know. He'd spent a lot of years being very good at not being seen. It was something he'd cultivated in the way you cultivate anything you depend on, carefully, consistently, without drawing attention to the process itself. After Margaret died, the offers of help had come first. Casseroles, invitations to dinner. People asking how he was doing in that particular tone, that weighted, careful tone that meant they were hoping for a short answer. He'd given them short answers, and eventually the offers stopped, the way they always do, and he'd been left with exactly what he'd told himself he wanted. Space, quiet, nobody needing anything from him. What he hadn't anticipated was that nobody needing anything from him also meant nobody seeing him at all. It happens gradually. You say no enough times and people stop asking. You keep your head down long enough and the world accommodates you. It steps around you the way water steps around a stone. Not unkindly, just efficiently. And somewhere in there, in that slow accommodation, you stop being a person to most people and start being a feature of the landscape, the man with the gray house. Arthur had read those words on the envelope and almost smiled. That's what he'd become. Not a name, a house color. He thought about writing back. He actually got as far as sitting down with a notepad and a pen. He sat there for a long time. The pen didn't move. What do you say to something like that? What do you say to 11 words that somehow reached through 31 years of careful distance and did what no adult had managed to do in 3 years of well-meaning condolences? Everything he thought to write sounded wrong. Thank you. Too formal, too distant. That was kind of you. The kind of thing you say to someone who held a door. Nothing fit. Because what he actually wanted to say was something he didn't have language for yet. Something he wasn't even sure he had the right to feel. So he said nothing. But on the fourth morning, something shifted. He was on his walk. Headphones in, same route, same pace. Coming down the far end of Sycamore Drive, heading back toward his house, and he saw her, Lily, on her front lawn, crouched down, examining something in the grass with the focused attention of a scientist or a philosopher. A bug, probably. A rock. Something ordinary that she decided was worth looking at. She didn't see him coming. He slowed down without meaning to, and in the 10 feet before she looked up, Arthur had a choice. He could do what he'd always done. Keep walking, eyes forward, headphones in, the invisible man on his invisible route. It was easy, it was practiced, it required nothing. She looked up, and he had maybe half a second. He raised his hand. Not a wave exactly, more of a acknowledgement, the kind of gesture that's too small to call a wave and too deliberate to be an accident. His hand came up slightly, a movement from the wrist, and then came back down. Lily stared at him for a moment. Then she raised her whole arm, a full, unambiguous 9-year-old wave, elbow straight, palm flat, the kind of wave that has no subtext, no strategy, no self-consciousness whatsoever. Arthur nodded, kept walking. But his chest felt strange, tight in a way that wasn't unpleasant. The way a muscle feels when it's been unused for a long time and you've asked something of it again. Not pain, something closer to the feeling of being reminded that the muscle is still there. He got home, closed the door, stood in the hallway. 43 years of marriage had taught him that some things don't need to be analyzed. Some things just need to be allowed. Margaret had told him that more times than he could count. Arthur, you don't have to understand everything. Sometimes you just have to let things be what they are. He hadn't been very good at that, but he was learning, slowly, quietly, the way old things learn. The wave became a thing, not a big thing, not a thing anyone would notice or write home about. Just every morning when Arthur came back from his walk, if Lily was outside, they acknowledged each other. His nod, her wave. 30 feet of street between them. maybe 4 seconds of contact total. But it was something. And here's what Arthur noticed, in the way a man who has spent years paying attention to nothing finally starts paying attention again. It changed the texture of his mornings, slightly, subtly. The way adding one ingredient to a recipe you've made 100 times changes the whole dish without you being able to say exactly why. He started checking the weather the night before, not for himself. He'd walked in rain plenty of times, didn't bother him. But if it was going to rain, she probably wouldn't be outside. And he realized somewhere around the second week that he was mildly disappointed on rainy mornings. He noticed that too, noticed himself noticing. Then on a Saturday in late September it happened. He was in his front yard, rare for him. Usually he moved through his outdoor spaces quickly, functionally, but the gutter on the left side of the house had been draining wrong and he needed to take a look. He had a ladder against the wall and was doing what men of his generation do when something is broken, which is stare at it seriously for several minutes before deciding what to do. What's wrong with it? He looked down. Lily. Standing at the edge of his yard, hands clasped behind her back, looking up at him with the guileless directness that children aim at adults like a flashlight. He almost said nothing, go home. The words were right there, the old words, the practiced words. Instead, he said, gutters clogged. She considered this. With what? Leaves, probably. Maybe a bird got in there. A bird? Her eyes went wide. Is it still alive? No, Lily, it's not still alive. He said her name without thinking. He didn't even notice until he was back down the ladder and she was still standing there, unhurried, in that way children stand when they've decided they're not leaving. How do you know my name? I know more than people think, he said. And then, because something in him was loosening in a way he couldn't quite control, he added, your mother's name is Claire. You have training wheels you refuse to take off. And you were the one who killed my impatience 2 summers ago with your bike. Lily's mouth opened. I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. A pause. The Saturday morning moved around them. A lawnmower somewhere distant, a car pulling out of a driveway, leaves doing what leaves do in late September. My mom said you lost your wife, Lily said. Just like that. The way only children say things. Directly, without armor, without the elaborate social scaffolding adults build around painful subjects. Arthur was quiet for a moment. Yes. I lost my grandpa last year. She said it with the weight of someone who had been carrying it and was carefully setting it down. I still forget sometimes. Like I'll see something and think, I should tell Grandpa about that. And then I remember. Arthur looked at her for a long moment. Yes, he said again, softer this time. That's exactly what it's like. Something passed between them then. Not sentiment, not performance, just two people, 1'9", 171, standing in a yard with their grief acknowledged and not dressed up in anything. Not fixed, not explained away, just shared for a moment. And that's the thing about grief that takes years to understand, if you're lucky enough to understand it at all. It doesn't want to be solved. It doesn't want a lesson or a silver lining or a reminder that life goes on. It just wants to be seen, witnessed, met with the same honesty it arrives with. Margaret had known that. Apparently, so did Lily Brennan. Arthur cleared his throat. You should probably go ask your mother if it's all right you're over here. She can see me from the window, Lily said, unconcerned. Arthur glanced across the street. He couldn't see anyone at the window, but he had the distinct feeling that was either a lie or a guess delivered with complete confidence, and he wasn't sure which was more impressive. Go home, he said. But there was something in his voice that wasn't quite authority, more like a man trying to end a conversation before it undid him completely. Lily looked at him steadily. Okay, she said. Bye, Mr. Holloway. She turned and ran back across the street in the unhurried loping run of someone who has nowhere urgent to be but is running anyway because running is fun. Arthur stood in his yard for a moment. He looked up at the gutter. He looked back across the street. Then he went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and took the letter out of the nightstand drawer where he'd moved it the day before. He read it one more time. "I see you every day. I just wanted you to know." He understood now for the first time that the letter hadn't only been about him. October arrived the way it always does in that part of the country, not suddenly but unmistakably. The light changed first, then the smell of the air, then the trees along Sycamore Drive started letting go, one branch at a time, in that slow, unhurried surrender that always looks more like grace than loss. Arthur started leaving his door open in the mornings, just the screen door, just for the first hour or so, while the coffee was on and the air was still cool. He hadn't done that in years. Margaret used to love the fall air in the house. Let it breathe, Arthur. Houses need to breathe. And he had closed that habit along with everything else after she died. He didn't think about it much when he started doing it again. It just happened. The way a lot of things were just happening lately. He'd also, without fully deciding to, started taking his coffee on the porch instead of at the kitchen table. This meant he was outside in the mornings in a way he hadn't been before, not walking, just sitting, watching the neighborhood wake up. Lily noticed, of course. She noticed everything. By the second week of October, their mornings had developed a rhythm. She'd come out to wait for the school bus, backpack enormous relative to her size, and she would stop at the edge of her driveway and look across the street. He'd be on the porch, he'd nod, she'd wave. Sometimes that was all. Sometimes she'd call something across, a question, an observation, a piece of information delivered with the urgency children attach to things adults have long classified as non-urgent. "Mr. Holloway, did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts?" I did not. One of them stops when they swim. They basically die a little bit every time they go anywhere. Arthur thought about that for the rest of the day. One afternoon, a Thursday early release day, she showed up at his door. Not with a letter this time, just herself, standing on his porch, asking if she could see his backyard. She'd seen it from her window, she said, and there was something back there she'd been wondering about. He almost said no. He said yes. What she'd been wondering about was the rose bushes. 4 of them along the back fence, unpruned and overgrown. They hadn't been touched in 3 years, and it showed. But they were still there, still alive in the obstinate way roses refused to die even when neglected, putting out small, imperfect blooms that nobody was seeing. "These are beautiful," Lily said, standing in front of them with her hands behind her back, her official looking-at-things posture. "They need work," Arthur said. "My grandma had roses. She said they're the most determined flowers. They bloom even when you forget them." Arthur said nothing. He stood next to a 9-year-old girl in his overgrown backyard and looked at his dead wife's roses and felt something move through him that he couldn't have named if you'd given him a week to try. The closest he could come was this. It felt like being found. Not dramatically. Not in the way people talk about finding themselves in movies, some grand revelation in a beautiful location. Just the small, almost embarrassing feeling of being located, of having someone say, without saying it, "You're here. I can see you, even the parts you've neglected." He went and got his pruning shears from the garage. He hadn't touched them since Margaret. He showed Lily how to cut at an angle, how to find the dead wood, how to be firm with a rose bush because roses, despite their reputation, respond well to honest attention. She listened with absolute focus, the kind children apply when they've decided something is worth learning. They worked for an hour. Her mother, Claire, came over around 4 o'clock. She stood at the gate of the backyard, looking at the 2 of them, her daughter and the man who'd never once spoken to anyone on the block without complaint, and she had an expression Arthur couldn't quite read. Something between surprise and something gentler than surprise. "Lily, it's time to come in." 5 more minutes. "Now, please." Lily handed back the shears, looked at the rose bushes with satisfaction, then looked up at Arthur with that unhurried gaze she had. "They're going to be really good in the spring," she said. "Maybe," Arthur said. "Not maybe. Definitely." She said it with the absolute certainty of someone who has not yet learned to hedge their hopes. "You just have to keep working on them." She went home. Arthur stood in the backyard alone. The light was going amber, the way it does late on October afternoons, and the roses, rough still, far from finished, caught it in a way that made them look like they were glowing from inside. He thought about Margaret, not with the usual weight, with something lighter. He thought she would have liked that kid, and then surprising himself completely, he smiled. Not big, not the kind of smile you'd photograph, just a small shift at the corner of the mouth, a muscular memory, the face doing something it had almost forgotten how to do. He stood there with it for a moment, not rushing it away. Then he went inside and made dinner, and for the first time in 3 years, he made enough for 2. He noticed that when he sat down alone. He left the extra portion on the table for a moment, then he covered it and put it in the refrigerator. Tomorrow, he thought. The letter came back to him on a Tuesday morning in November. Not literally. But he woke up thinking about it, the way you wake up sometimes already in the middle of a thought, as if your mind kept working through the night without telling you. He lay in bed in the gray early light and thought about 11 words and about the fact that he still hadn't said anything back. Not really, not in a way that counted. He got up, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table. This time the pen moved. He wasn't sure how long he sat there. He didn't write quickly. That had never been his way. He wrote slowly, the way he did everything that mattered. Stopping, rereading, starting over twice. He wrote 4 sentences. He read them back. They were true. That was the best thing he could say about them. They didn't perform anything. They didn't try to be more than they were. They were just 4 sentences from a 71-year-old man to a 9-year-old girl who had done something no one else had thought to do. He folded the paper, walked across the street. He stood at the door for a moment. He knocked. Claire answered. She was in a work blouse, coffee in hand, the particular expression of a woman managing 17 things before 8 in the morning. She looked at him, Arthur Holloway, who had never once knocked on her door in the 6 years she'd lived across the street, and her face went carefully neutral in the way people's faces go when they're not sure what they're about to deal with. Mr. Holloway, I have something for Lily. A pause. She's eating breakfast. I know, I won't keep you. He held out the folded paper. Claire looked at it, looked at him, took it. I'll make sure she gets it, she said, and her voice had shifted slightly. Less guarded, not warm yet, but moving in that direction. He nodded, walked back across the street. He never found out exactly what Claire's expression was when she read those 4 sentences before giving them to Lily, but he had his suspicions because 2 days later she showed up at his door with a container of soup, my mother's recipe. There's way too much for just us, and she didn't say anything else about it. Arthur took the soup, said thank you, closed the door, stood in his hallway with a container of someone else's soup, stood there longer than necessary. Then he put it on the stove, heated it up, and had it for lunch. Lily asked him about the letter the next Saturday. She'd come over to check on the roses. This had become a thing now, these impromptu visits, and Arthur had stopped pretending he didn't know they were coming. You said you kept something of hers, she said, standing at the back fence, mittens on now, her breath a small cloud in the November air. She was referring to one of the 4 sentences. She had apparently memorized the letter. Her cardigan, Arthur said. I keep it in the hall closet. Lily thought about this. Do you take it out? Sometimes. I kept my grandpa's watch, she said. I don't wear it. It's too big, but I like knowing it's there. Arthur nodded. Do you think they know? She asked. Not dramatically, the way she asked everything, as a genuine question because she genuinely wanted to know. Arthur was quiet for a long moment. I used to think about that a lot, he said finally. Whether she could see what I'd done to myself after she was gone, whether she was disappointed. Lily looked at him steadily. I don't think she'd be disappointed, she said. I think she'd just be glad you're fixing the roses. Arthur looked at the rose bushes. 31 years on this street. 43 years of marriage, 3 years of managed emptiness. And here he was, standing in his backyard on a cold November Saturday, being told something true by a child in mittens. There are moments that don't make sense in the context of your life until much later. Moments that seem, at the time, like small things: a conversation in a backyard, a container of soup, 4 sentences written at a kitchen table at dawn, but that you understand eventually were the moments when the architecture of your days quietly changed. Arthur understood that later, but even then, on that Saturday, with winter coming and the roses rough but alive and Lily standing beside him like she'd always been there, he felt the weight of something lifting, not all at once, not completely, but the way a door feels when you've been leaning against it and finally step back, that sudden absence of resistance. He didn't cry. He wasn't that kind of man, and he knew it. But he stayed outside longer than he needed to, and when Lily finally went home and he went back inside, he walked past the hall closet and put his hand flat against the door for a moment. The way you touch something when you want it to know you haven't forgotten. Then he went to make dinner. And this time, without thinking, without ceremony, he turned on the radio. Something from the 60s came on. He left it playing. Winter settled over Sycamore Drive the way it always does. Slowly, then all at once, the roses went dormant. The walks got shorter. The mornings Arthur spent on the porch moved inside, back to the kitchen table, but now with the radio on. That was new. That stayed. He and Lily had developed a kind of language that needed very little translation. She'd knock on his door on Saturday mornings, sometimes with questions, sometimes just to be there in the way kids are sometimes just there, with no agenda beyond presence. He'd let her in, make hot chocolate she didn't know he'd started keeping in the cabinet specifically because she'd mentioned once, offhandedly, that it was her favorite. He never told her that. But she knew, because she noticed everything. And here's the moment I want to pause, not to break the story, but because if you've made it this far with me, I think you already know why this story matters to you. You're not watching this because you care about Mr. Holloway and a little girl you've never met. You're watching this because somewhere in you there's a part that recognized something. Maybe in Arthur's silence, maybe in the way he'd rearranged his life around an absence, maybe in the way it took 11 words from a child to do what years of distance hadn't been able to undo. If you're here with me at the end of this video, I want to take a second and invite you, genuinely, to subscribe to this channel. We're here every day with stories like this one, stories that don't shout, stories that just sit beside you for a while. Subscribe, hit the bell, join us. Because the people who find this channel usually find it for a reason, and you already know what yours is. Now, back to Arthur, because the story isn't done yet, and the most important part is still coming. Spring arrived and the roses did exactly what Lily had promised they would. They came back, not perfectly, not the way Margaret's roses used to look when she tended them, full, precise, almost architectural in their beauty. But they came back alive and honest and imperfect in a way that felt somehow more true than perfect would have. Arthur cut a small bunch one morning in early May, put them in a mason jar on the kitchen table, sat with his coffee and looked at them for a long time. Then he did something he hadn't done in almost 4 years. He walked to the end of the street, to the house with the blue shutters where Linda still lived. Linda, who had brought the brownies after the funeral, the brownies. He'd turned away with a sentence that had cost her nothing to give and everything for him to receive. He knocked on her door. She opened it. He held out a small bunch of roses from Margaret's garden. "I owe you an apology," he said, "from a few years back." Linda looked at the flowers, looked at him. "Arthur," she said, "come in and have some coffee." He went in. The world is full of doors we close and tell ourselves we closed for good reasons, and maybe some of them were good reasons at the time. Maybe the closing made sense once, but there comes a point, if you're lucky, if something or someone gets through, when you stand at those doors again and you realize the reason you kept them closed had nothing to do with the people on the other side. It was always about what you were afraid would happen to you if you opened them. By the end of that spring, Arthur Holloway had spoken to 6 of his neighbors, Not all at once, nothing dramatic. One conversation here, a nod that turned into a sentence that turned into a cup of coffee. Small things, but real things. The porch light came back on. Lily noticed, of course. She told him one afternoon, sitting on his porch steps while he pruned the front hedges, the ones that had gotten out of control over 3 years of not caring, that her mom had said something. She said, "You're different now," Lily told him. Arthur kept pruning. "Different how?" She said, "You seem like you came back." Arthur was quiet for a moment. He thought about that phrase, came back, the way it implied he'd been somewhere, which he had, in a way. You can live in a house for years while being completely absent from it, present in body, somewhere else entirely in every way that counts. He'd been gone, he'd come back. And the thing about coming back, the thing nobody warns you about, is that it's both harder and easier than you expect. Harder because it requires you to feel things you'd gotten very good at not feeling. Easier because it turns out the world is generally willing to let you back in. People are more forgiving than we give them credit for, especially the ones who've been waiting. Years pass the way years do when you've stopped fighting them. Lily turned 10, then 11. She lost the training wheels finally on a warm afternoon in April. Arthur watched from the porch and said nothing, but when she made it to the end of the block and turned back, grinning, he raised his coffee mug toward her. She understood. She turned 12, started middle school, got busy in the way kids get busy when the world begins to expand and the radius of their days stretches past the street they grew up on. The Saturday visits became less frequent, then occasional, then rare. Arthur understood that too. He didn't hold it. That was something he'd learned, the hard way, the only way some things get learned, that holding people too tight is just another form of closing a door. You can love something and let it move. You can be changed by someone and not require them to stay and keep changing you. The changing had already happened. When Lily was 13, her family moved to Portland. Her father had gotten a job offer, the kind you don't turn down. Claire came across the street to tell Arthur herself, which meant something. He made tea. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd read 11 words on a pink piece of paper 3 years before, and talked for over an hour. When she left, she hugged him. Arthur couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him. He stood in the hallway after she left and held very still, the way you hold still when you're trying to keep something from dissipating. Lily knocked on his door the morning they left. The moving truck was already loaded. Her parents were doing the last walkthrough of the empty house. She stood on his porch with her backpack and her too-big jacket and her steady, unhurried gaze. "I'll write to you," she said. "I know you will," he said. She hugged him too, small arms, enormous sincerity. He watched the car pull out of the driveway, watched it go down Sycamore Drive, past the houses she'd grown up watching, and turn at the corner. Then she was gone. He went inside. He took the letter out of its drawer. He'd moved it to a small wooden box on his nightstand, the same box that held Margaret's wedding ring and a photograph from their honeymoon, and he read it. "I see you every day. I just wanted you to know." He put it back, made coffee, sat on the porch, and the neighborhood went about its morning around him. Cars and birdsong and someone's kid on a bicycle, and Arthur Holloway, 74 years old now, sat in it. Not apart from it, in it. That was the difference. That was the whole difference. He read the letter every morning after that. Not out of grief, not out of longing, out of something he couldn't name precisely, but that felt, on most mornings, like gratitude. A small daily practice of remembering that the distance you put between yourself and the world is a choice, and that sometimes, if you're lucky, if you leave a screen door open at the right moment, something gets through anyway. Not because you deserved it, not because you asked for it, but because a 9-year-old girl looked across the street and decided that seeing someone was worth doing, even when that someone had given her no reason to believe he'd welcome it. He kept the roses going. Every year, he kept the porch light on. He learned slowly to make too much food on purpose because there was usually someone to share it with now. Linda sometimes. Claire when she visited with Lily for a weekend once a year. Neighbors whose names he now knew without having to think about it. He became, without planning it, without announcing it, without ever once describing it to anyone, the man on the street who remembered things, who noticed, who left a container of soup when someone had surgery, who sent a card for things people didn't expect cards for. He wasn't sure when it happened. He thought about that sometimes. He thought, we spend so long becoming walls that we forget we were always meant to be doors. He thought, the most important thing anyone ever gave me was the simplest, not wisdom, not advice, not a lesson carefully delivered. Just, I see you, 11 words, less than that even. 3. If this story stayed with you, share it with 5 people who might need it today. Not because it's a great video, because you know someone out there who's been a little too quiet lately, someone behind a curtain, someone who forgot what it felt like to be seen. Leave a comment below, a real one, not a reaction. Tell me something true, and tell me what you want to hear next, what story you need. I'll be here tomorrow. I'm always here. The letter, they say, was found in the wooden box on his nightstand, still folded along its original creases, still pink, still true.